Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Organize Your Own Peer Network workshop by Dragonfly Mental Health. We are here organizing this workshop for the second time because we think it's extremely important and valuable for our community and for supporting mental health. And as last time, it is also free for participation. Okay, excuse me, I'll have to close the window. Free for participation. We are also recording this event, so if you do not want to be recorded, please turn off your camera, and for the first part, please also mute your microphone, and later on you can, of course, unmute yourself when we start taking questions and discussing. All right, so first of all, I would like just to tell you a little bit about Dragonfly and how we come to exist as a nonprofit. So we are founded in 2019, and the birthplace of Dragonfly Mental Health is actually Berlin. So the city that I live in and the city where one incredible conference happened, iScientist, where a few of us co-founders happened to be there and to recognize mental health as extremely important topic that we wanted to continue working on. And we were not satisfied with how everything was addressed currently in the academic system and in the academic community. So we are a nonprofit organized by academics for academics, and it has already more than 180 current volunteers. We delivered more than 80 programs in 7 different countries and in 3 languages for just over a year of functioning and working as a nonprofit. And we provide consulting services. We want to do independent research and to support academics at all levels and in very different ways. So when it comes to our approach, we function on 3 levels. So one level is a global consortium for academic mental health, where we want to conduct research and address systemic issues. Other level is building community within Dragonfly Cafe. So this is an event that is happening 3 times per week, every week. And we started last year when COVID started. And yeah, that event actually was initial a trigger for something incredible that is happening, and where academics from all over the world can hang out, talk either about mental health or a variety of different topics. We have once per month a theme topic, but otherwise it's very much open floor for anything that can emerge at that point. And what is taking the most of our time, and we are the most focused, are on-campus programs, where we want to create cultural and climate changes directly in the academic communities, and where we are delivering our programming. So those are either talks or workshops. And for example, this peer network workshop is one of the programs that we are trying to build. Most of our functioning is really revolving around 5 core elements of this wellness wheel that we think represent 5 domains of excellence that are necessary for supporting and creating excellent mental health in academics worldwide. And these 5 pillars are peer networks first, building a community and supporting each other. And this is also something that recently, if you're following Welcome Trust, released their report on mental health at work, and they also recognize peer networks and peer support as one of the pillars for mental health. So we are happy that we are not the only one recognizing this, but it's becoming even bigger. Then mental health literacy. So educating people, educating academics about mental health issues and mental health topics. Then fighting stigma, one of the most important pillars in order to continue as a community and to help everybody who needs help and is usually prevented by stigma, the biggest barrier to mental health, reach out for help in academia. then skills workshops. We are working to develop new skills that will support all academics at all levels of the career, and department committee, where we envision to work with individuals at the specific institutions or universities that are dedicating to pushing forward the agenda of mental health within their own community. Okay, I think I should admit people unless somebody else has the rights. So yeah,
make me a co-host. I can take care of it as well.
All right, then Olia, please
then,
do.
Yeah, because yeah, you cannot do both, so that's okay.
All right.
Don't worry.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sure.
I just noticed 6 people, so I wanted to admit. Before we start with today's agenda, which is okay as follows. So first of all, meeting the panel. There are lovely people from Dragonfly who are here to present you how to build your own mental health peer network. Get oriented first, find your why. They said everything starts with why. Then you get to how and what. How to get allies, how to get support from management and peers. Then we're going to talk about building a backbone. So designing structure and schedule that will support you with your peer network. And yeah, how to get the word out, how to be heard and seen, and how to communicate with the audience the importance of your topic and get them on board. Yeah, so meeting the panel. First, let's start from me. My name is Jelena, and I'm a PhD student in Berlin, in Germany. And I'm also a co-founder of Dragonfly Mental Health and director of operations. My work is researching depression and multiple sclerosis from the neuroimmunological perspective. And when it comes to founding or starting peer networks, I had experience from Student Neuroscience Society back in Serbia, in Belgrade, where I studied, and also here in Berlin within Charité PhD network before I embarked on this journey with Dragonfly Mental Health. So I hope my experience would be useful for you and valuable for you. Next one is Ru, our executive director.
Hello, my name is Ru. I'm the executive director at Dragonfly Mental Health, and I got my PhD from Johns Hopkins in cellular and molecular medicine. And in my undergraduate career was where I first started building peer networks. I built a pre-health peer mentoring program at Brooklyn College in New York to help all students going into pre-health professions be as prepared as possible. And then at Hopkins, I built the Peer Collective, which is again a peer-centered organization by the students for the students to help students get access to all of the support and care and advice that they need.
Next is Olia.
Hi, so yes, I'm Olia. I am a Chief Administrative Officer of Dragonfly and also co-founder. And my experience started pretty much with my postdoc terms, because when I was a PhD student, it was really difficult for me. So my main motivation was to make sure that our PhD students don't struggle as much as we did back in the days. So yeah, I have organized mental health initiative in my Max Planck Institute in Dresden, and also co-organized the mental health collective of the Max Planck Society. And I see the members, some of the members are here. I'm very happy to see you. And also as a non-mental health organization, I also created the Dresden Maspec community. So yeah, that's pretty much it of my experience, which I'll share with you today. Last but not the least, Jelena, you still have to make me a co-host so I could help you with accepting people. Okay, right. Then Mary.
Okay, then maybe we go first to Mary and I try to fix the problem.
So hello, everyone. My name is Mary Huff. I completed my PhD in behavioral neuroscience at the University of Iowa, and I'm currently a postdoctoral researcher in Kansas City, Missouri, in the United States, still studying the long-term stability of memory mechanisms. I'm currently the consulting team co-lead here for Dragonfly. And as far as mental health peer networks, I helped found what is known now as Stowers Connection, a community at my home institution where we, as the name implies, try to connect people, but also connect people at our institution to local resources, institutional resources, or even national level resources that may be beneficial for them. And Akil is up next.
Yes.
Hey everyone, my name's Akil and I'm the consulting team's co-lead. I'm also a postdoc at the University of Glasgow, and I'm researching imaging systems and applications of imaging systems for biophotonics and medical imaging. So I've in the past, when I was based at my PhD university at Cranfield, I was able to assist with forming a graduate student community. The idea being the events that were organized there, the way it was done was effectively to promote a sense of community. Within the Young Professionals Advisory Committee that I chair right now, we're also having the same sort of theme for promoting a sense of community amongst individuals, both from using a digital platform to eventually at some point in time moving to in-person conferences. I'm sure that'll happen soon enough. Thank you.
Thank you all. And yeah, let's continue with our workshop. So find your why.
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about how you find your why and really why it's important. So finding your why helps you get oriented, and it's identifying the reasons why you're creating a peer network in the first place. And if you think about it another way, it's really answering the question of how do you think a peer network will address the concerns and create change? This is really an ongoing process, but we are here to make sure you don't get overwhelmed by it. We want to make sure that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and we're hoping this talk will help with that. Is when you find your why, it really helps you consider every aspect of what your ideal peer network will look like in the future. So now we're going to do a little poll, and I'm going to put the question in the chat, but I'll say it as well. The first question, hold on, let me put this in the chat. The first question is, have you started a peer network, or do you want to start a peer network? And we encourage you to be active in the chat. Put a 1 for yes, a 2 for no. Oh, we're getting some numbers, both ones, fantastic. And yeah, this is really to get a sense of who's in the process of already starting peer networks, what stage you're at. Oh, this is fantastic, so exciting. So you can see many people putting 1s in the chat, or that they want to in the future, which is great. The second question I have, and you can continue answering that in the meantime, is the second question is, have you found barriers to starting a peer network? And again, a 1 for yes and a 2 for no. And I'd encourage you to take a minute to write down what those barriers are if you have experienced any barriers, and share them with us towards the end when we have question answer sections, or you can definitely put them in the chat. I'm sure, you know, we are our best resources for each other. And so the ways in which you've struggled are very likely the ways in which other people have struggled. And we can all come together and find out what works best and advise each other in the best way we can. So thank you all for participating in that quick poll.
Those were a lot of 1s. So
yeah,
yes,
very
for
exciting.
both questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So why start a peer network? And in this section, we're going to be talking about the why, like I mentioned. Why am I creating this peer network in the first place, as well as what potential main goals and main themes are. And for the remainder of the slides of this talk, we're going to be giving a bunch of different perspectives, different answers to the question. They can be, you know, your peer network can have some of these answers, all of these answers, none of these answers. So it really depends on what your why is and what you hope your peer network will achieve. But some of the examples of what a why could be include the fact that no one is talking about mental health in your institution or in your academic environment, or that you've tried to talk to admins about it and no one wants to listen to students. And so that can be your why. Let's fix this issue. Let's start talking about it. A second why can be to minimize the negative impact that academia has on our mental health. So it can be, I know I'm struggling with my mental health. How do we fix this? I know my peers are struggling. How do we fix it? And that can be the impetus for starting a peer network. Next, we have to prioritize and push student or postdoc agendas on mental health that need funding. And that's something that I've seen a number of peer networks do in order to really create an initiative, a group of people who are trying to accomplish the same goals and changing the way mental health is addressed in their campus. And so that can be another really fantastic why for why you start a peer network. And also to create a more open and inclusive environment. And the reason this is so important is because really creating inclusivity, an open environment where people feel like it's a safe space lowers barriers and access to care. And that's really important. So yeah, those are some of your potential whys. If you don't see your why here, feel free to put it in the chat. We'd love to see what it is. So once you have your why, once you start thinking about, okay, I want to build this peer network because, then you have to start thinking about your goals. Okay, what do you need to accomplish in order to fulfill the conditions of your why? And so that can be to address mental health and the wellness needs of your community. And that can mean creating events yourself, or that can mean bridging the gap between students and services that are already available on your campus, if there are. Many times I've seen that there are, university health and wellness offices that students just don't know about the services they provide. And so sometimes it's just about bridging that gap, and really narrowing down your goals helps you figure out what action steps you need to take in order to achieve those goals. Next, your goal can be to establish a more open and supportive community. Like I said, inclusivity is so important, and having the support of your peers is incredibly important. And you can use it even to have events in which peers can socialize. And that's a huge part of reducing stigma, reducing the feelings of isolation that students can have, as well as any other level within academia. This talk is for students, postdocs, faculty, staff, and peer networks can be a mix of those or individual groups. But one of the main goals of some of these peer networks can be to train peer mentors and match them with mentees. And that can be really great in a peer network that includes people from all different levels of academia, where you have postdocs who can be mentors to PhD students, and early career scientists who can be mentors to postdocs, et cetera. So it really depends on what your why is, what your goals are, and that helps you decide where to go to next. Themes. So depending on what your goals are, you have to decide, okay, if I'm going to put on events, what are going to be some of the themes of these events? What are we going to talk about in group discussions? And so some of those things can be peer support and advice through mentorship and allyship. You can talk about things like, how do I maintain my motivation? How do I manage my stress? You can have interactive community events that is either within your academic community or within the community where your institution is located, and those can be really good tools for a peer network to gain support from the community. You can have mental health awareness and support campaigns that you run in your community, as well as advocate for improvement of faculty mental health training, so that faculty can be aware of how they can best help their students, how to recognize the signs and what to do about it when they do. So as you can see, it's across the spectrum of ideas and goals and themes, and it really, you have the freedom to personalize it to your individual case. So who do these peer networks target? Who are the target groups? So as I mentioned, this can be at any level of academia. It can be specifically for postdocs, or specifically for students, specifically for faculty or for staff. It can even be for an entire department or for an institution as a whole via instituting education and training that's mandatory for everyone to take. And it really depends on what the need of your individual community is. For the majority of academia, there's really this neglectful gap in programming to address mental health needs. For some, it's a community will only galvanize and start to create these peer networks in the event of a suicide of a colleague, which is incredibly unfortunate that we should have to wait until something tragic happens to really make a difference. I always like to say, be the change that you want to see in your academic community. And that's really what the goal of these peer networks are. And as Yelena mentioned, there is literature that's been published to show how incredibly big the need is for mental health to be addressed within academia. Recently, the Council of Graduate Schools as well as NASM have published literature encouraging universities to reallocate funds towards these initiatives. I think most of us here know that the need is incredibly big, and yeah, be the change you want to see. Yeah, and so who will benefit from the activity, these peer networks? And so again, it can be students and postdocs, faculty, advisors, programs, and staff. It can really even be to the extent of the scientific process and the institution as a whole. Because if you think about what peer networks do to support students, you're really safeguarding your students and their future potential by helping them maintain their mental health and support them in whatever way possible. And so if your mental health improves, your science will improve, your funding will improve, and the institution will be very happy. So these are some of the reasons we think, we'll hopefully convince them to start putting funds in this direction. And yeah, your network can be inclusive or exclusive of selected groups. And most of the time, this depends on how many students you have involved in the initiative, whether or not you have enough funding, and the bandwidth constraints of the people involved. And so for some of the organizations I created, it ended up being for students only because we didn't have the funding to support more than just students. But then we applied for grants, were able to be more inclusive and include more students into our programming. And so I do encourage people to apply for grants, look for funding opportunities, look for sponsorship opportunities for, community, companies, organizations to sponsor activities within your peer network in order to really be able to open it up to as big of an audience as you'd like. And yeah, that's some of my tips for how to get started.
Thank you. All right, we're moving forward to allies.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in my experience, it's extremely important to find allies because not only because you'll get the support, but also because they will eventually shape how your peer network is developing. It's a task which you cannot maintain by yourself. It's not a one-man job. So it is extremely essential to find your team. So first, I'd like to recommend you to talk to the friends whom you have in the institute, to the lab mates and people in academia to find support, for example, like to us. Then you need to think on how to advertise the fact that you're going to create the workshop. So the peer network. So I would recommend you to put out invitation to the whole school or the whole institute for the interest people. So in my case, I used the all institute mailing list because I wanted it to be as inclusive as possible. You could also recruit by asking each department who the local students are who care about mental health to identify driven and passionate individuals to help to start up. And then you need to pool the students' body to access which, or student representatives to assess which formats will be most effective. So if you are a postdoc, you could talk to postdoc representatives and PhD students representative, for example, because now the community is there and ready for the change. So typically these people are the people who are interested in change, so they most likely will support you. And when it comes to the institutional support, I would recommend you to speak to all level deans and heads of the university services, student assistance programs, psychological services, if you have one in your institute, and ask if they work with you to address the student needs, or if they'll help to publicize and get fundings, for example. Sometimes, and out of my experience, the low-level management is usually against this kind of initiatives because they think that it will mean more work to them. So it's reasonable to try to address it, to talk to them, to say, hey, it doesn't mean that you'll have more work. It means that I'm going to take, and my colleagues are going to take care of it. We're just letting you know, sort of like. And typically directors are more supportive. I mean, of course, it depends on the institute but usually like higher level management is more supportive. And I would also suggest you to make leave behinds for them and schedule meetings. So if someone is not supporting, then what to do? Still schedule meetings and go on. And don't be afraid of going over someone. So if the lower level management is not supporting, go to the higher level management, and no one will like, I mean, if they're unhappy with it, well, what to do, you know? Sometimes you will be, sorry, Elena, can you?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Sometimes you will be supported only after advocating vocally numerous times. That's true. And for us, for example, what really was helpful is that higher management supported me with pizza. They said, well, you know, we cannot do much, but we can like buy some pizza and drinks and, you know, like, so you could have an open half-an-hour discussion. So I just bought pizza and put it downstairs in the lobby, and people joined, and we had a wonderful brainstorming sessions of what could be done. And sometimes they will not be interested in supporting you, but they will not forbid your activity either. Indifferent people are, so they don't care, fine by me, you know, like not everyone is there yet to be emotionally intelligent enough to support mental health initiatives. You know, one way or another, maybe, hopefully they will come to this point. Yeah, okay, then if we're talking about the department support, after getting plus PhD and postdoc rep support and coordinator support, such as like postdoc program coordinators or PhD program coordinators, I would recommend you to coordinate with students and postdoc organization and representatives to cross-advertise. This is really, really helpful because they all have their own mailing lists, and it will help you to reach out and have bigger outreach. Pleasant persistence is key. Yeah, you never know who will be an ally. That is absolutely true. Sometimes people will surprise you. So people whom you would never expect to support you will actually support you and be all along with you. If someone says no, then just move on. This is obvious, like consent, we all are aware of it. Ask, will the individual organizations promote your programming? This is already by the time when you have some programming, which we'll talk about or talked before. Or will they encourage students to utilize it, or will they refer students in need to address and to join before crisis occurs? This is essential. The prevention is one of the things which you really, so when looking for allies in between higher managers, prevention is the key, because this is something you'll tell them, okay, so if we apply the prevention, then no one will lose in productivity. And this is something which they really love. And will they coordinate with us about events to prevent schedule conflicts? This is, of course, essential, but usually since you are a peer network sort of organizer and sort of in the, like in the bottom of management organization, they will usually just tell you, here are the slots, take any, but don't overlap with our slots. But this is pretty straightforward because at least in most of the universities, the calendar is open. So you can simply check the calendar and say, okay, I identified this kind of slot, so please let me know which one can I take. Yeah.
Thank you, Yulia.
Sure.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm actually going to sort of extend the conversation about building the actual design structure when it comes to having a system in place. Now, as Olya mentioned already, not only is it not a one-person job, but at the same time, you want to build a structure that's sustainable and not extraordinarily dependent on single individuals. Sure, passionate, single motivated individuals are good when things are coming up off the ground. It's good when you're trying to inspire more and more people to join in, participate, and be a part of the organization. But you want a structure that effectively allows the sustainability of the organization itself. So representatives, obviously, and volunteers chipping in wherever they can, establishing a structure where you have presidents who perform leadership roles, officers who take on subdivisions, and working group leads who take on a further subdivision. You form committees where you have a chairperson and additional roles up to about 7 members. You don't want it to be a large council that's predominantly going to be members who are representing the organization, but you also want it to have a leader and a person chairing it that is the driving force of that particular working group or that particular committee itself. The division of labor is obviously a very important part of this, because as it's not a one-person job, it's important that every single individual works as both as a part of a team, but also has their own personal initiative and motivation to make sure that the tasks are executed, the events are in place, and the community benefits from that motivation as well. Committee members must be assigned, of course, discrete roles, and they're handling individual aspects of the entire organization, because at the end of the day, you want it to come together as a jigsaw puzzle so that every individual is contributing in their own way. But in the global scheme of things, you have an organization that functions as well as it can, as a well-oiled machine in every single aspect. When it comes to events, it's important to engage with your organization, with your community, and with the people who are participating. So obviously you have it to be as frequent as possible so that people can benefit from it. But at the same time, you do not want it to be so far apart that people forget the initial motivation as well. You can pick from a multitude of formats. You can do workshops, group discussions, and sponsored events. You can have events for each major transition or each major event. Let it be a wellness day, let it be a mental health awareness day. You pick the day so that you can actually highlight what's important on that particular day. But I have to say at this point, it's also important that it's not something that's only important on that particular day. A university mental health awareness day is a single day, but of course it's an annual, month by month, week by week initiative that needs to be focused on every single day. You can pick a multitude of topics as well. You could have organizations or specialists or speakers come in. A little pitch for Dragonfly itself. We've got our own set of programs, so please check the website so that you have an idea of what Dragonfly offers. And all of those programs will help in sort of a personal development or a continuous development of the individual itself. This isn't a certification, of course, but personal development will obviously benefit and trickle down into other sectors of life as well. And obviously you want the schedule to be regular, not too frequent, but at the same time, not too far apart. It helps engaging with your audience on a regular basis so that it eventually becomes a two-way conversation. So the three next important things in terms of schedule itself is regularity. You want the events to be when necessary, but at the same time, you also want it to be scheduled, because you want a certain aspect of the organization going through along a schedule, while the organization making its respective meetings and its respective events requires individual discussions as well. Try and meet as often as possible. You can divide your organization into groups and subgroups so that the subset of the organization is able to meet as frequently as necessary. And the most important thing here is as frequently as necessary. Some organizations will benefit from meeting once a month, while an events management team will benefit from meeting more often, because social media management and things like that are quite dynamic. Obviously, the most important thing at this stage is try and avoid making a meeting for the sake of making the next meeting. You would like to be as efficient as possible, while obviously being respectful of everyone's time. Where can you do it? Currently, we're obviously stuck in a virtual environment. So Zoom events are the majority of events that are possible at this stage, but sure, that still has a sense of community wherever it's allowed and wherever it's legal to do so, based off of individual restrictions. Wherever you're based around the world, you could obviously have meetings outside, you can have meetings wherever it's allowed. In the university, however, and as I keep saying it over and over again, this is a temporary situation, and COVID will eventually be a part of the past. So when we do get to that point, try and have meetings both inside the university and outside. I find the conversations that people have within the university sometimes may differ from the conversations people have in informal settings, in a coffee shop, as you're walking along in a park. So it depends on where you do it, how you do it, and obviously assess the event based off of what you can do. Try not to have a wine party in the park, but you could obviously have a cheese board and a wine gathering inside the university, as long as it's allowed, of course. And how do you actually regulate this? The host in charge is actually quite an important aspect of the organization. You're going to find, as you build these organizations, that not only is the leadership proactive, but you might end up having individual volunteers who are very, very proactive, who would like to do more and more and more and more. At this point, it's important to understand certain individuals having that initiative and allowing them both a platform and a position where they can bring up their own agendas, and you as a group can discuss the efficacy of it about carrying it forward. But in such meetings, it's also important to understand that you're there to listen, you're there to gather ideas, you're there to make sure that everybody feels a part of the community. So as an organization trying to build a community, it's also important that people within the organization feel like they're a part of a community as well. So based off of who calls the meeting, what's the topic of the conversation, have somebody at the helm of that particular discussion so that you're promoting a positive conversation as you go through each aspect of that. And obviously the most important thing about it is, as we're sitting in front of Zoom conversations, computers, as we are right now, please be extremely mindful of everyone's time, because even I have been on the receiving end of meetings being scheduled 1 minute apart. So when you have to go, you have to go. So I wish you the absolute best for your peer support networks, and handing it back to you, Elena.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Akhil. We are handing to Mary now.
Okay, so now that you have figured out that you want to have a peer network and you've started to lay down some of the structure, how do you continue to engage your community and engage, whether that's your university, your constituency group, your administration, to keep putting things forward? So first of all, how do you get new members? Maybe it's only 1 or 2 of you getting started. I know that's how it was when I started a group, and from similar stories that I've heard from other people on the call today. Send an email, send it far and wide if you can. So Olya had mentioned sending these all institute-wide emails. Most institutions have a listserv where there's kind of a shorthand that you can reach every single member or employee of your institution. If you want to have it be one of those more inclusive environments that Rue talked about, then again, most institutions will have a listserv for just your postdocs, just your PhD students. Maybe they'll have an internal way to communicate that's not email. Systems like Teams or Slack that are supported by internal organizations are another great way to just drop information and engage more people. Social media accounts. I think most people right now think Facebook, Twitter, but also LinkedIn. We can additionally use those internal accounts. So if you are at an institution who uses the Microsoft suite for you also have access to a lot of other tools. I had already mentioned Teams, where you as a user can actually set up things. Microsoft also has an internal version of Twitter, essentially, where you can just go and continuously be posting and people can come across that. And I've found that really useful. Monthly newsletters, making these both in print and in digital format to advertise your plans, your mission, your structure, and really trying to catch those who may not be seeing other forms of advertising. Maybe it's someone who doesn't like to use social media. And again, as we move back into the physical world and our off screens, having print accessible to those who may need it is very important. And this doesn't just have to be at your institution. So often we think about leaving flyers in break rooms or general lab meeting spaces, but adding these to public spaces in the community, especially where people might be gathering that you would be interested in targeting. So examples might be pubs or restaurants that you know are frequented by members of your targeted constituency groups. Also coffee shops, when those become open to us all again. I know that I, as a postdoc, have spent a lot of time in cafes. You can also talk to other associations. So Olya had mentioned this with allies, right? Go to those pre-formed organizations, go to graduate student organizations, go to separate societies within your institution. a postdoc association, even graduate school offices or support people may not be able to join your committee or give you funding, but they can help distribute that advertising that you already have. They can send it out to their listservs, they can post it on their social media or their websites, and again, potentially reach those people that you either haven't thought about or haven't been able to access the means that you've been using. Once you have a committee or a community, how do you communicate? How do you share information? How do you brainstorm and make those next steps? So we've listed here some things that we do at Dragonfly. As was mentioned, we are an organization of over 180 volunteers spread across the globe. So in order for us to be able to communicate efficiently and effectively, we do a lot in Google Docs. So everyone can submit their input. We can leave comments, suggestions, but it's all one place if you are someone who is interested in looking at those documents. Slack is a great external source. So if you don't want it attached to an institution, anyone can make what's called, a group on Slack, and then you can have separate channels for different working groups or subcommittees within your organization. Create your own mailing list. Again, this can be done. Most often people think of the Gmail suite or the Google suite to do this, but you can create lists. And once you have content that's ready to share, it's super easy then to just direct it towards that one list rather than having to comb through individual members. If you can have a website, that is great, where you can maintain members, where you can continue to post this information, where you can reach out to people who maybe used to be involved in your organization and have moved on to different stages of their careers so that they can continue to use that word of mouth style advertising to engage people in their new communities. Here at Dragonfly, we have a newsletter that comes out, so our Dragonfly Diaries, and this is a way that we can continue to keep existing members engaged in our community. Submit content, we can do a newsletter. Rue helps put that together for us, so I will make sure to link to that here in the chat when I get done talking. But it's a really nice way for us to continue to be a community while also getting information out to our members. It is really important that what is being done in your organization at the organizational level is being distributed to those who may not be involved in leadership or those working groups. So having news that's promoted, like I said, in a newsletter, in a social media account, when there are changes, shows a two-way communication to your members. It shows that we are listening to our constituency and trying to be responsive, and in the same respect, trying to let them know when things are happening at an organizational or an administrative level. At Dragonfly, we use our website to house all of our events and archive materials. At your institution, that might be something that needs to be done internally. And speak from personal experience there. My committee actually doesn't have an external facing website, but on our internet, we have a full website that's built out with places people can go for resources, upcoming events, as well as archiving all past events and recordings of those events that potentially missed something can still have access to that information in perpetuity. And then how do you reach people completely outside? So again, we circle back to public as much as you can. Use those pre-existing university or institutional wide lists, flyers in every public place or semi-public place where you think that you're gonna be able to target a community member that might be interested and supportive of your organization, and go to other events. So talk to people, let them know what it is that you're doing, why you're there, and be engaged outside of your own program, department, university, or school. It's a little bit easier, again, when we move back into the quote unquote real world and being able to exist in shared physical space. But it's also kind of nice because you can now in a virtual space hop on to a webinar that's even being given in a different country in a totally maybe different discipline than what you have. As any member of an institution, you can continue to post, share on social media, send emails, text your friends, let them know when you find interesting things that are going on. Absolutely is an opportunity to collaborate. And then the very last thing is speak to the media. So generally, this is going to be a point person for your institution, some sort of leadership or administrator that is going to have a targeted message where they can reach out beyond kind of the immediate community. And as it says there, get publicity, publicity, publicity. There is no such thing as bad PR. I think they say anytime that we can get people talking about mental health and engaging in building and supporting communities, that is a good thing.
Thank you very much, Mary.
Awesome. Well, the last thing we'd like to say in terms of information is to just reiterate that we have Dragonfly Cafe as part of our own peer network, which meets 3 times a week at 7 p.m. Central European time. Like Elena said earlier, we do have themed cafes where we have invited speakers talk about specific topics and have a facilitated conversation. It's still a very casual, informal atmosphere. It's kind of like a drop-in social hour, open community support, and the topics range from mental health to things in academia to totally unrelated topics like what you baked that week. So it can be a really interesting way to meet new people and get the support you might not have in your immediate environment. So if you're interested, definitely go to our Dragonfly link that we have there to sign up for the listserv, and you can find it as well on our website. Next, we'd like to open the floor to questions. Thank you so much to all of our speakers and to you all for being so engaged in the chat. We have a bunch of different barriers here. I hope we have addressed a lot of them. If there are any we haven't addressed, please bring them up.
And I also would like to add that if you are to create your peer network and you need like support sort of online, just let us know. We're thinking of creating maybe a Slack space separate, devoted to these aspects of difficulties and overcoming difficulties. So let us know. We'd like to stay in touch.
We have another question from Tim, who asks if we find it better for peer networks to work if they are a specific set of people, for example, just a group of PhD students or one group for postdoc, or if the group contains people from different career stages. So who would like to take this question? Mary, Olia, Akhil?
I'm going to try and sort of work through this question, but I have to say that at this point, it's basically my personal opinion about what works best. It depends on the kind of group that you're actually talking about, but if you take a blank slate, you might actually find that the best way to do it is by making sure it's a group of peers. But if you actually are in a situation where you understand how that particular research team works or how that research group works, I've had it happen in the past where it was absolutely possible for me to even actually be at a social event with my PhD supervisor. But that's not always the case when it comes to different research groups and different research teams. You might have postdocs who are working on a daily basis with PhD students, so mixing those groups actually is not a problem. But I would say the best way to go about it, if you don't understand the community itself, is to make sure that people have something to share in a safe space. So putting PhD students together or graduate students together and postdocs together, you might actually have a better traction. But at some point, you also want to bring those groups together. There is also another element of this at postdoc levels and further on, because people are usually further along both in their career and in their life. They might have a support structure outside work. So you might not actually need to specifically cater for somebody's peer support at that level, but a PhD student who's probably moved countries and continents will require additional network and the sense of community. So I know it's sort of a double-edged sword about saying, well, you need to know who you are trying to cater for, but at the same time, it's also important to understand that you want it to be as safe a space as possible. So start with just the same people at the same stage, with people at the same stage, and see how you actually go about it. And you can just sort of play it by the cuff at that point.
Yes.
And I do want to be mindful of time. So if anyone has to go, definitely feel free to leave. I do want to add one more point to the answer for Julia, that if you don't have the support from the top down, you can try galvanizing the community of peers and do a fundraiser to raise funds, or go to your community and look for organizations that support whatever initiatives you're looking towards, and see if they'll fund or sponsor events and things like that. So there are places to look outside of the university structure itself. And like Mary said, as soon as they see that you're going ahead full steam regardless, and that you're creating a positive change, they're going to realize that they look bad for not supporting you, and hopefully they'll pitch in and really lean in with the institutional support at some point.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I am agreeing with Ru. We should be mindful of time. And we also recorded this, and we will be sending slides. And if you have any other question, please feel free to write us an email. And yeah, we will be happy to further engage and help you with whatever question or initiative you have.